Lord, teach us how to pray. A number of years ago, I was chaplain at a women's prison, and by this time, I'm a Franciscan friar, solemnly professed, and I'm also an ordained priest. And so the women wanted to watch The Passion of the Christ, and so I arranged for us to watch the movie, and it was a Friday night, and so about 20 women came to the chapel, and they forewarned me ahead of time, make sure, Dan, you have lots of Kleenex. So I put out lots of Kleenex boxes. As we're watching this movie, I can see that these women could relate what Christ had gone through. And so at the end of the movie, I'm kind of tired, and I kind of just give a little wave and say, oh, have a good night. And one of the women stops me and says, what, you're going to leave us like this? We ought to at least say a prayer. Lord, teach us how to pray. And we recognize that Jesus had to learn how to pray. He had to learn from his parents on how to pray. He had to learn in the synagogue in Nazareth how to pray, and also by going to the temple. But we also see in Jesus' life that he took time even at night to pray. He went to a mountain to pray. I mean, we can pray anywhere simply because the presence of God is everywhere. But in Jesus' prayer, he recognized the intimacy of God, and that's why he addresses God as Father, or we may say Abba, that is to say Daddy. You know, a number of years ago, my friend and I and my brother's friend were at the bottom of Lake Louise, ski hill, and my brother's friend yells out, Dad, Dad. In other words, he's calling his dad. And there's a huge crowd, and my friend kind of makes fun of this. He's like, why are you doing that? Dad's not going to hear you, or about 45 different men are going to look at you. And I was kind of thinking the same way as my friend. But what do you know? The dad actually heard his son. You know, God hears us. And this really ties in with the two parables that we heard in our gospel reading about persistence in prayer. You know, the Lucan community was starting to lose heart. You know, they're offering all kinds of prayers, and it doesn't seem like God is responding. So why would we want to repeat the same thing over and over? Is that because God is really old and he can't hear so well? Well, no. It's really to teach us how to be poor in spirit. In other words, how to depend on God. You know, in Francis's life, St. Francis, he had to learn how to be poor in spirit. You know, he had lived his own life. I'm going to live my life my way. And when that didn't go so well, he surrendered and became poor in spirit. But he daily recognized his poorness in spirit. In other words, that he was a beggar before God. And God blessed him. But when Francis went out, you know, he became a peacemaker simply because, you know, prior in his life he had been greedy, and he recognized how greed led to war. And also he would have witnessed the violence of war, and so he wanted to live his life different. He wanted to be a peacemaker in the world. And one of the ways that he was a peacemaker was simply by reaching out to the lepers, you know. And then also Francis, you know, the approach that he did his work in, you know, he would sing a song in French, he would play a fiddle using a couple sticks, you know, he made his work fun. You know, it was his purpose in life to be a peacemaker. Now, one of the ways that we can be a peacemaker in life is to pray for others. You know, we're made aware of many different things going on in our world, and one of the things we can do is to pray for these people. These people become intimate to us, they become present in our hearts, and we offer these people to God. But it ties in with the expression, you know, think globally, act locally. You know, if we're praying for peace between Ukraine and Russia, then hopefully we're being peacemakers where we are. But you know, as we pray for others, we are mindful of other people. It's one way for us to be charitable of others. But also when we come in the presence of these people, it helps us to see these people in a positive light. You know, if we're at odds with someone, one of the greatest things we can do is pray for that person as long as we need to, so that when we see that person, we have a better picture of that person. We want to actually greet and meet that person, and we will witness the presence of God in that person simply by our prayer, or being awakened to the presence of God in that person. Now, God also lets us share in the death and resurrection of Christ by our baptism. You know, we recognize each and every day we have to die to self, but we are going to rise to new life, and we're going to hopefully raise others to new life. And so as we gather around the table, Lord, you know, once again, Lord, teach us how to pray. Help us to be mindful of others in our prayer. Help us to focus on you. And may this nourishment that we receive awaken us that God is truly present within us, so that we can see the presence of God around us.